We're gonna read the first 6 verses and then verse 7, which is where we're gonna root ourselves today. And so last week I read it in the Message translation. Today I'm gonna read it in the New Living Translation. It's good to kind of have different paraphrases and translations available so we can kind of get really to the heart of what is being taught in this Holy Scripture. So join me. I'll read it, I guess. You don't, and all right. I don't want you to forget, Apostle Paul starts in the letter, in this chapter. I don't want you to forget, dear brothers and sisters, about our ancestors in the wilderness long ago. All of them were guided by a cloud that moved ahead of them, and all of them walked through the sea and dry ground. In the cloud and in the sea, all of them were baptized as followers of Moses. All of them ate the same spiritual food. All of them drank the same spiritual water, for they drank from the spiritual rock that traveled with them, and that rock was Christ. Yet God was not pleased with most of them, and their bodies are scattered in the wilderness. These things happened as a warning to us, so that we would not crave evil things as they did, or worship idols as some of them did. As the scriptures say, the people celebrated with feasting and drinking, and they indulged in pagan revelry. So to help us understand, we see that it's actually a quote that Apostle Paul is writing in this letter, and the quote comes from Exodus chapter 32, verses 1 to 6. And so to help us kind of get a sense of what Paul is talking about, let's just jump in now into the Exodus story that Paul is warning us about and read what is happening. And we read, when the people saw how long it was taking Moses to come back down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron. Come on. I wonder if they actually said it like that, but come on, they said, make us some gods who can lead us. We don't know what happened to this fellow Moses who brought us here from the land of Egypt. So Aaron said, take the gold rings from the ears of your wives and sons and daughters and bring them to me. All the people took the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. Then Aaron took the gold, melted it down, and molded it into the shape of a calf. When the people saw it, they exclaimed, "O Israel, these are the gods who brought us out of the land of Egypt." Aaron saw how excited the people were, so he built an altar in front of the calf. Then he announced, tomorrow will be a festival to the Lord. The people got up early in the next morning to sacrifice burnt offerings and peace offerings. After this, they celebrated with feasting and drinking, and they indulged in pagan revelry. There it is. There's the verse. And so it's easy to judge and to scoff at the Israelites. But can I suggest that it's actually hard for us to see ourselves in the story because we don't actually often take time to focus on the Egypts and systems and structures that are in our hearts, that exist in our own life. I want to suggest that what Apostle Paul is highlighting for us to be careful about is how easily we too can be swayed. When all that we believe in, when all that we hope for, when all the things that we believe make sense in life stop working. Like life takes a turn in the way we didn't expect. When things happen in life that just really shouldn't happen. Now for Israel, we see that they grow impatient, right? We read that in fact, they were so impatient, they begin to say things like, we don't know what happened to this fellow Moses. Like, you mean the guy that led you out of Egypt, like your leader? You call him fellow? You're like removing yourself from this relationship. We don't even know where he is. The wilderness has a way of revealing and exposing our hearts. It has a way of revealing what's actually going on behind the thing that we're doing or thinking. And so it is easy for us to read these stories and shake our heads and say, oh, wavering Israel. But can I suggest that one of the roots and the problems in this story of idolatry that Paul is talking about is actually the heart state of impatience. Now, I'm just going to put up 2 questions on the screen, one at a time, and you can take a screenshot of them because I'd want to welcome you to think about them through the week, or you can write them down if you're not a picture person. But where does your mind, and it's the same question I'm asking myself, where does my mind tend to go when impatience arises? Where does your mind go when impatience arises. And the second question I want us to kind of ruminate on and think through the week is, where do you tend to look when impatient? So there's things in your mind that come up, there's emotions and feelings that rise up, and where does that cause you to look when that happens? So we may not understand things like pagan revelry and be like, well, how does this connect with us? And we maybe even scoff at the word idolatry. But Apostle Paul is drawing out that in the wilderness, in our impatience, when God doesn't provide in the way we thought he would provide, this impatience causes us and leads us into places we probably would not venture into when life is full of abundance, when things are going well. And even as people of Israel who were enslaved in Egypt, they were stripped away of all the things they knew how to do, how to exist, how to have life. All the systems were stripped. And now with unknowing and uncertainty, following God in this dusty and dry wilderness, they're confused. Because for them, for the Israelites, they were shaped over centuries to believe that their worth was rooted in what they could do. Make more bricks. Provide this, build this. What they could accomplish was their identity. We may find we have similar shaping in our lives. It may have been maybe growing up, you maybe have heard things like make something of your life. Or maybe the society pressures that seemingly we're always asked, like, well, what do you do for a living? Or kids go to university, what are you going to be when you're done? And as we explore how the idolatry of what we do may be present in our lives, we may become overwhelmed. We may be thinking, well, I do need to do something. And now I'm confronted that there's idolatry to what I do. Just please tell me what to do. We might find ourselves in that spot this morning. We may desire things to be simple and easy, but the realities of the heart are complex. We have a relationship with God, not a list of do this or don't do that. The journey of the wilderness is to expose and to reveal and to begin to dismantle these idols that become lodged in our hearts. And all of this takes time. And the impulse to do actually reveals a heart that has been shaped in a particular way. Now, certainly in the wilderness, so often our wilderness journeys are often so shaped by loss or lack, and we're aware of what we don't have. It becomes very clear in the wilderness that I'm lacking here. And the idolatry of what we possess can be quite deceptive because the possessions we have are generally good things. Having a house is a good thing. Having transportation for work and life is good. They're often needed things. The trouble arises is how we are possessing the things we have. And the wilderness lays us bare. We become aware that things are amiss and we are in need of deep soul work. And this is brought to our attention in the loneliness of the wilderness. Our impulse and impatience can be to deal with it on our own, to use our own resources to address our emptiness or nakedness or loneliness. The impulse to do that we just talked about in the first temptation becomes forward to what we have. The impulse to possess is a response to the experience of feeling that lack in the wilderness. In the wilderness spaces of life, one of the distinct features that can arise again is loneliness and being by ourselves and not sure, do people think I'm crazy? What's happening here? And when suffering and the experiences of aloneness can be all these things can be very profound. Our response can be either to resist and to manage those difficult emotions with our own resources, or to discover how Jesus might desire to be with us in those moments of isolation. Loneliness and feelings of alienation are common human experiences. We know this. And for many of us, we learn how to navigate them even from the early age, right? We learn how to do things to either get noticed by others or to stay off the radar so that wouldn't lead to any potential criticism of us. We've learned from a young age how to navigate those systems. And so as we continue to consider this idolatry that Paul is warning us about, Apostle Paul, we can make an idol of what others think of us. And so we have to be careful of that. It can be a place we go to receive what only God can give us. Oh, if people just cheer me on and know I'm awesome, then I'll feel like I'm loved. But we know from people who are cheered and loved loudly that doesn't last. Because only God can offer that love that we deeply need. So in our Lent journey, in this wilderness, we give up something. And we may be tempted to ask questions like, does this matter? Does God really care? Because nothing's really changing for me. But we do it so we learn patience and trust. We do it to learn patience and trust. We do it because we know that God will fill that gap, that I can't. And in our wilderness journey is the time to examine our hearts and our desires to exploit and to become our own gods, or to create a God for ourselves. In the wilderness, we're reminded that we can imitate God pretty good, actually. Pretty good. But just for a while. Eventually, our imitation, our other images that we create, or what we do and what we have and what others think of us, eventually on their own, they fail. So the wilderness does the job well when it exposes those idols and that impatience in our lives.